February 23, 1945. 1200 hours and 14 minutes. The summit of Mount Suribachi on the Japanese volcanic island of Iwo Jima. 6 United States Marines raise an American flag, 96 inches by 56, on a length of Japanese pipe found in a destroyed Imperial Navy radio station. An Associated Press correspondent named Joe Rosenthal photographs the moment at 1/400th of a second exposure, aperture f/16. The photograph will win the 1945 Pulitzer Prize for photography. It will become the single most reproduced photograph in the history of any war. 3 of the 6 men in the photograph will be killed in combat on Iwo Jima within 30 days of this moment. Watch for a Pima Indian named Ira Hayes. Watch for a Marine named Harold Schultz. Watch for a song that Johnny Cash will record in May of 1964. Iwo Jima is a volcanic island in the Pacific Ocean, 660 nautical miles south of Tokyo. It is 8 square miles in area. Its dominant terrain feature is Mount Suribachi, an extinct volcano 169 meters tall, located at the southwest end of the island. By 1944, Iwo Jima was strategically important to both sides. It contained 2 military airfields, designated Motoyama No. 1 and Motoyama No. 2. The U.S. needed Iwo Jima as an emergency landing field for B-29 bombers damaged on raids against the Japanese mainland. It also needed it as a fighter base for P-51 Mustangs to escort B-29s on those raids. The Mustangs lacked the range to fly from the Marianas without refueling. The U.S. invasion plan was codenamed Operation Detachment. It called for the deployment of 3 Marine divisions, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, totaling approximately 70,000 men. Overall command was given to Vice Admiral Raymond Spruance of the U.S. 5th Fleet. Marine Ground Command was given to Lieutenant General Howland "Mad" Smith. The Naval Support Force consisted of approximately 880 ships. The pre-invasion bombardment lasted 72 hours and used approximately 24,000 naval gun rounds. The Japanese commander on Iwo Jima was Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kuribayashi, age 53. He had been assigned to the island in June 1944. Kuribayashi was a cavalry officer by training. He had attended the Imperial Military Academy at Tokyo, graduating in 1914. From 1928 to 1930, he had been assigned as the Japanese military attaché in Washington, D.C. He had also studied at Harvard University during this period. He had driven across the United States in a Studebaker. He had visited the Ford Motor Company plants in Michigan. He had calculated, in a 1932 staff paper, the U.S. industrial production capacity. He had concluded, like Admiral Yamamoto before him, that Japan could not win a long war against the United States. By 1944 he was assigned to defend Iwo Jima specifically because his superiors knew he would not waste the defenders. Kuribayashi commanded approximately 21,000 Japanese defenders on Iwo Jima. 12,000 were Imperial Japanese Army. 7,000 were Imperial Japanese Navy. The remaining 2,000 were Korean construction workers. Kuribayashi's defensive doctrine for Iwo Jima was different from previous Japanese island defenses. He explicitly forbade the traditional banzai charge against landing forces. His doctrine, recorded in a December 1944 staff paper, was simpler. Each Japanese defender would kill 10 American Marines before being killed himself. The defense would last as long as one defender remained alive. To execute this doctrine, Kuribayashi spent the 8 months from June 1944 to February 1945 constructing a network of defensive tunnels through the volcanic rock of Iwo Jima. By February 1945, the tunnel network totaled approximately 11 miles in length. Some sections were 40 meters underground. The tunnels connected approximately 750 fortified positions. Each fortified position was independently defended. Each had to be cleared by Marines individually. Each Japanese defender, by Kuribayashi's order, was to fight from his position until killed. The American invasion began at 0900 hours on the morning of February 19, 1945. The first Marine landing wave hit the southeastern beaches of Iwo Jima at 0903. The beaches consisted of fine black volcanic sand of approximately a meter depth. Marine vehicles bogged down immediately. Marine infantry could move only at a walk through the loose sand. The first 20 minutes of the landing were unopposed. Suribachi had ordered his defenders to hold fire until the maximum number of Marines were on the beach. At 09:25 hours, the Japanese opened pre-sighted artillery and mortar fire on the entire 7-kilometer landing zone. The casualty rate on the beach for the first hour exceeded that of D-Day. By the end of February 19, 1945, the Marines had landed approximately 30,000 men on Iwo Jima. They had taken approximately 2,400 American casualties. They controlled approximately 600 meters of beach depth. Mount Suribachi, the volcano dominating the southwestern beach approach, was assigned to the U.S. 28th Marines, of the 5th Marine Division. Their commanding officer was Lieutenant Colonel Harry Liversedge. Liversedge's plan was to isolate the volcano from the rest of the island by cutting across the narrow neck connecting the two. The cut was completed by 0600 hours of February 21, 1945. The volcano then had to be cleared cave by cave. The work was assigned to the 28th Marines 2nd Battalion. Its commanding officer was Lieutenant Colonel Chandler Johnson, age 36, of Boston. Johnson's battalion contained approximately 900 Marines. By the morning of February 23, after 36 hours of cave clearing, his battalion had taken approximately 320 casualties on the volcano alone. On the morning of February 23, 1945, at 0800 hours, Johnson ordered a 40-man patrol from Easy Company of the 2nd Battalion to climb to the summit of Mount Suribachi. The patrol commander was 1st Lieutenant Harold Schreier, age 28, of Manchester, Tennessee. Schreier's patrol carried, in addition to standard combat equipment, an American flag of dimensions 54 inches by 28 inches. The flag had been requisitioned from the U.S. Navy attack transport USS Missoula. The patrol began the climb at 0830 hours. They reached the summit at 10:26. They had not encountered Japanese defenders during the climb. The summit caves had been emptied during the previous 36 hours of cave clearing operations below. Schreier ordered the flag raised at the summit at 10:30 hours. The flagpole was a length of 1.5-inch iron pipe, approximately 5 meters long, that had been part of a destroyed Japanese radio station rain catchment system. 3 Marines of the patrol, Sergeant Henry Hansen, Corporal Charles Lindbergh, and Private First Class Louis Charlot, set the pipe vertically and attached the flag. The flag was raised by Hansen, Lindbergh, Schreier, Sergeant Ernest Thomas, and PHM Second Class John Bradley. The first flag raising was witnessed by Marines on the beaches below. Cheers were heard up to 5 kilometers away. The U.S. Navy ships in the bay sounded their sirens. Some Marines openly wept on the black volcanic sand. Among those who saw the first flag raising was U.S. Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal, age 53, who was on Iwo Jima for an inspection visit. He stood beside Lieutenant General Holland Smith on the beach. Forrestal turned to Smith and said the sentence that became, in subsequent Marine Corps mythology, the most quoted single statement of the entire Pacific War. He said, "Holland, the raising of that flag means a Marine Corps for the next 500 years. Forrestal then asked, jokingly, if he could have the flag as a souvenir for his office at the Department of the Navy. Smith forwarded the request to Lieutenant Colonel Johnson at the base of the volcano. Johnson refused. He decided that the flag, as a symbolic battle trophy, should remain with the Marines who had won it, specifically, with the 28th Marines. He decided, however, to replace the small first flag with a larger one, both to make it more visible from a distance and to ensure that the original would remain securely with the 28th Marines as a Marine Corps trophy. Johnson sent a runner, Marine Private First Class Rene Gagnon, age 19, of Manchester, New Hampshire, back down the volcano with the small first flag and in order to return with a larger one. Gagnon obtained the second flag from Lieutenant Allen Wood, the communications officer of the U.S. Navy LST 779. The flag measured 96 inches by 56 inches. It had been recovered from a destroyer at Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Gagnon climbed the volcano with the second flag. He arrived at the summit at approximately 11:50 hours of February 23, 1945. He delivered the flag to a small group of Marines that included Sergeant Michael Strank, age 25, of Conemaugh Township, Pennsylvania, Corporal Harlan Block, age 21, of Weslaco, Texas, Private First Class Franklin Sousley, age 19, of Hilltop, Kentucky, and Private First Class Ira Hayes, age 22, of Sackatone, Arizona. Hayes was a member of the Pima Indian tribe of Arizona. His tribal name was Bidala, meaning, falling across. He had enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve on August 24, 1942. Strank, Block, Sousley, Hayes, and Gagnon were joined at the flagpole site by a 6th Marine, Private First Class Harold Schultz, age 20, of Detroit, Michigan, of Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines. Schultz had climbed to the summit independently of Gagnon, as part of a separate Easy Company detachment that had been clearing residual Japanese cave positions on the volcano's eastern face. At 1200 hours and 14 minutes of February 23, 1945, the 6 Marines, Strank, Block, Sousley, Gagnon, Hayes, and Schultz, began to raise the second flag on a second piece of iron pipe approximately the same length as the first. The raising took approximately 12 seconds. The flag came up against a steady eastward wind of approximately 20 km per hour. The flag unfurled fully at the moment the pole reached vertical. Joe Rosenthal, the Associated Press correspondent who had been climbing the volcano with Easy Company since dawn, was approximately 10 meters from the flagpole at the moment of the raising. He had stacked 3 rocks beneath his feet to gain elevation. He had set his speed graphic camera to 1/400th of a second exposure and aperture f/16, with Eastman Kodak Super Panchromatic film at ASA 100 sensitivity. He had not been looking through the viewfinder. He was holding the camera at chest height and looking up at the men. He pressed the shutter at the moment the pole reached approximately 70 degrees from vertical. The shutter exposed a single sheet of 4x5-inch film. Rosenthal removed the film holder, reversed it for a backup exposure, and clicked the shutter a second time. He then turned and walked away from the flagpole. He did not know, at the moment of the photograph, whether he had captured the moment cleanly or whether he had missed it. He would not know for 14 days. The film had to be flown to Guam for development. While Rosenthal was photographing the second flag raising, a U.S. Marine Corps photographer named Sergeant William Janost was filming the same event with a 16mm motion picture camera. Janost's film, which captured approximately 12 seconds of the raising, would later be used to verify the authenticity of Rosenthal's still photograph and to identify the 6 men. Janost himself was killed 9 days later in a cave-clearing operation on March 3. Rosenthal's exposed film was carried to Guam aboard a U.S. Navy mail aircraft on the afternoon of February 23. It was developed by an Associated Press technician at Guam at 2300 hours. The technician examined the developed image. He immediately telegraphed Rosenthal's editor in San Francisco at 0000 hours of February 24, outstanding image. 6 Marines, Iwo Jima flag raising. Recommend full distribution. The photograph was distributed by Associated Press wire to its member newspapers in the United States and the Allied nations on the morning of February 25, 1945. It appeared on the front page of approximately 700 American newspapers within 48 hours. On May 7, 1945, the Pulitzer Prize Committee at Columbia University awarded Joe Rosenthal the Pulitzer Prize for photography. The award announcement contained one sentence about the photograph: "It is the photograph of the war." Meanwhile, the actual battle for Iwo Jima continued. The flag-raising photograph was, in operational reality, a single moment on the 5th day of a 36-day battle. The Marines on the island still had 31 days of combat ahead of them. Sergeant Michael Strank, age 25, the senior Marine of the second flag raising, was killed by friendly artillery fire on the morning of March 1, 1945, near Hill 362A on the central plateau of Iwo Jima. The shell that killed Strank was a U.S. Marine Corps 4.2-inch mortar round. It had been fired by a Marine mortar crew approximately 800 meters south of his position. He was the first of the 6 flag raisers to die. Corporal Harlan Block, age 21, the Texan who had stood beside Strank at the flagpole, was killed by Japanese mortar fire approximately 6 hours later, on the same March 1 day, in the same operational sector. Bloch was hit by a fragmentation shell that exploded approximately 3 meters from his position. He died within 90 seconds of the impact. He was the second of the 6 flag raisers to die. He died on the same day as Strank. Private First Class Franklin Sousley, age 19, the Kentuckian who had been the third man on the second flag raising, was killed by a Japanese sniper on March 21, 1945, in the cave-clearing operations of the Cushman's Pocket sector. Sousley was hit in the back by a single 7.7 mm rifle round. He died within 40 seconds. He was the third of the 6 flag raisers to die. He died on the same island, 18 kilometers from where he had stood at the flag. The battle for Iwo Jima officially ended at the morning briefing of March 26, 1945, when Lieutenant General Holland Smith declared the island secure. By that morning, 6,821 Americans had been killed. Of those killed, 5,931 were Marines, 881 were Navy, and 9 were Army Air Forces. An additional 19,217 Americans had been wounded. On the Japanese side, approximately 22,000 defenders had been killed. Only 216 Japanese were taken prisoner. The remaining approximately 5,000 were either killed in tunnel demolitions or remained hiding in caves through the official end of the battle. Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kuribayashi, the Japanese commander, was killed in the final phase of the battle on the morning of March 26, 1945. The exact circumstances of his death were never positively confirmed. His body was never positively identified. Some accounts state he committed seppuku in his command bunker. Others state he led a final small unit attack and was killed by Marine rifle fire. The U.S. Marine Corps Grave Recovery Team excavated the bunker. They found no body matching his description. 27 Medals of Honor were awarded for actions during the 36-day battle for Iwo Jima, the highest single battle Medal of Honor count in U.S. military history. The record has not been approached, in 2026, by any subsequent American operation. On April 22, 1945, the 3 surviving members of the second flag raising, Privates First Class Rene Gagnon, Ira Hayes, and Pharmacists Mate Second Class John Bradley, who had been incorrectly identified as the 6th raiser, were rotated back to the United States. They were assigned to the 7th War Bond Tour, which ran from May 9, 1945, through July 4, 1945. The tour visited 33 U.S. cities. It raised approximately $26 billion in war bond sales, the largest fundraising drive of the entire Second World War. Gagnon and Bradley adapted reasonably well to the war bond tour duties. They wore their dress uniforms. They posed for photographs. They signed autographs. They met President Harry Truman in Washington on June 19, 1945. Ira Hayes did not adapt. He was uncomfortable in the dress uniform. He was uncomfortable signing autographs. He told a war bond tour staff officer, on May 20 in Chicago, that he wanted to go back to the Marines and his unit. Hayes had also begun to drink heavily. By the end of the tour in July 1945, he was being escorted to and from public events by tour security personnel to keep him sober. He was sent back to Marine duties at Camp Lejeune in October 1945. Hayes was discharged from the U.S. Marine Corps on December 1, 1945. He returned to the Pima Reservation at Sackatone, Arizona. He was 23 years old. Federal law in 1946 prohibited the sale of alcohol to Native Americans on or off reservations. The law was administered locally by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The local enforcement, in Sackatone, was sporadic. Hayes drove to Phoenix or Tucson, both approximately 50 kilometers from Sackatone, to obtain alcohol. He was arrested on charges of public drunkenness 52 times between January 1946 and January 1955. He worked, between drinking episodes, as an agricultural laborer in the cotton fields of the Gila River Indian community south of Phoenix. He was paid approximately $1 per day for picking cotton. He attempted, in 1946 and 1947, to find federal employment under the GI Bill. He was rejected by 3 federal agencies. The reasons given were unsuitable comportment, a euphemism for his public drunkenness arrests. On January 24, 1955, 10 years to the day after the Iwo Jima invasion had begun on the East Coast time zone, Ira Hayes was found dead in a cotton field 3 kilometers north of his birthplace at Sakatone. The cause of death, certified by the Pinal County Medical Examiner Dr. Thomas Wilson, was exposure to cold and acute alcohol poisoning. Hayes had been on a drinking episode of approximately 4 days. His blood alcohol concentration at death was 0.31. He was 32 years old. He had a small canvas bag with him containing 2 empty whiskey bottles, a wallet with $11, and a small framed black and white print of the Iwo Jima flag-raising photograph. Hayes was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery on February 2, 1955. Approximately 300 persons attended. The pallbearers were 6 U.S. Marine Corps non-commissioned officers in dress uniforms. His headstone is in Section 34 of the cemetery, Plot 479. The inscription reads, Ira Hamilton Hayes, Pima Indian, Marine, Iwo Jima, January 12, 1923 to January 24, 1955. In 1962, an American singer-songwriter named Peter Lafarge, son of the anthropologist Oliver Lafarge, born in 1931, of Roman Catholic Boston Irish descent, wrote a song titled The Ballad of Ira Hayes. Lafarge composed the song over a 4-month period in his New York apartment in 1961 and 1962. The lyrics ran to 24 lines. The melody was traditional Appalachian, modeled on the song, The Battle of New Orleans. Lafarge recorded a small label version of the song himself in 1962. It received almost no commercial attention. He played it for the country music star Johnny Cash at the Newport Folk Festival in July 1963. Cash recorded his own version of the song on May 17, 1964, at the Columbia Records studio at the corner of 7th Avenue and 52nd Street in New York City. The recording took 23 minutes. It was completed in 2 takes. Cash's recording of The Ballad of Ira Hayes was released as a single by Columbia Records on June 1, 1964. It reached number 3 on the Billboard Country Singles chart by July 18. The Cash recording, by the count of the recording industry chart tracker Joel Whitburn, was the most played single song on U.S. country radio between July 1 and September 15, 1964. It was, in the language of subsequent music historians, the song that made country music political. Peter Lafarge, the song's composer, died of a barbiturate overdose at his New York apartment on October 27, 1965. He was 34 years old. The death was ruled a suicide. He had spent the previous 12 months suffering from severe depression. Johnny Cash, the song's most famous performer, lived to perform The Ballad of Ira Hayes approximately 1,400 times in concerts between 1964 and his death on September 12, 2003. He performed it for the last time at the Carter Family Fold in Hilton's, Virginia, on July 5, 2003. Rene Gagnon, the second of the 3 surviving flag raisers, lived for 34 more years after the war. He worked at a New Hampshire textile mill for most of his post-war career. He died on October 12, 1979, at the age of 54. The cause was heart disease. John Bradley, the pharmacist's mate second class who was incorrectly identified as the 6th flag raiser for 71 years, lived for 49 more years after the war. He worked as the operator of a small funeral home in Antigo, Wisconsin. He died on January 11, 1994, at the age of 70. Bradley had refused, throughout his life, to discuss the Iwo Jima flag raising publicly. He turned down all interview requests. He attended no Marine Corps reunions. His son James, born in 1954, did not learn about his father's role until his father's death. James Bradley wrote a book about his father and the other 5 flag raisers. It was titled Flags of Our Fathers. It was published by Bantam Books in May 2000. It became the U.S. #1 best-selling non-fiction book of 2000 and 2001. The book was adapted into a 2006 feature film, also titled Flags of Our Fathers, directed by Clint Eastwood. The film, released by DreamWorks Pictures, grossed approximately $66 million worldwide. Eastwood simultaneously directed a companion film from the Japanese perspective, titled Letters from Iwo Jima. The companion film, released 2 months after the first, won 4 Academy Awards. The first film won none. In 2014, the U.S. Smithsonian Institution produced a documentary about the Iwo Jima flag-raising photograph. During the documentary's research phase, 2 amateur historians, Eric Krell of Omaha, Nebraska, and Stephen Foley of Wexford, Ireland, independently questioned the official Marine Corps identification of John Bradley as the 6th flag raiser. Krell and Foley argued, on the basis of detailed forensic analysis of Sergeant Chinost's motion picture footage and Rosenthal's still photograph, that the man identified as Bradley was, in fact, Private First Class Harold Schultz of Detroit. The U.S. Marine Corps initiated a formal review of the identification on June 13, 2016. The review was led by Brigadier General Burke Whitman, age 61, of the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation. It included Schultz's surviving family and 3 Marine Corps historians. The Marine Corps review concluded on July 23, 2016. Its findings, announced by Commandant General Robert Neller, were that pharmacist's mate 2nd Class John Bradley had not been the 6th flag raiser. The 6th flag raiser had been Private First Class Harold Schultz. Harold Schultz had been born on January 28, 1925, in Detroit, Michigan. He had enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve on December 17, 1943, 3 weeks before his 19th birthday. He had served on Iwo Jima with Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines from February 19 through March 26, 1945. He had been wounded by Japanese machine gun fire on March 13. He had been evacuated to a U.S. Navy hospital ship on March 14. He had been discharged from the Marine Corps in October 1945. He had returned to Michigan and worked as a U.S. Postal Service mail sorter at the Detroit Central Distribution Facility for the next 33 years. He had married Rita Reyes in 1955. He had not, throughout his entire post-war life, publicly claimed to have been one of the Iwo Jima flag raisers. He had attended no Marine Corps reunions. He had given no interviews. He had not contacted any of the other surviving flag raisers. He had told his wife Rita and his stepdaughter Desiree McDowell, in 1990 and 1991, that he had been there at the 2nd flag raising. He had not described his role in detail. He had said the matter was closed. 3 weeks before his death from natural causes on May 16, 1995, at the age of 70, Harold Schultz told his stepdaughter the following sentence in the kitchen of their Detroit home. He said, "I was one of the 6 flag raisers. The Marine Corps got the wrong man." Desiree McDowell, age 46 in 1995, asked her stepfather what she should do with the information. Schultz said, "Nothing. Nobody will believe you." Nobody believed me. He died at his home on May 16. 21 years later, in July 2016, the U.S. Marine Corps formally believed Harold Schultz. By then, his Detroit grave had stood unmarked as flag raiser for 2 decades. His widow Rita had died in 2008. The corrected Marine Corps identification was added to the National Archives caption of Joe Rosenthal's photograph in August 2016. The caption now identifies the 6 men, in left-to-right order in the photograph, as Sousley, Hayes, Strank, Schultz, Block, and Gagnon. John Bradley's role in the actual events of February 23, 1945, was clarified by the same review. He had been a member of 1st Lieutenant Schreier's earlier patrol that raised the small first flag at 10:30 hours. He had been correctly identified in that earlier raising. The error was specific to the second, more famous photograph. The U.S. Marine Corps War Memorial, the bronze statue based on Joe Rosenthal's photograph, located adjacent to Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, was dedicated by President Dwight Eisenhower on November 10, 1954. The statue was sculpted by the Austrian-American artist Felix de Weldon, age 47 in 1954. It is 32 feet tall. It depicts the 6 flag raisers in the exact positions of Rosenthal's photograph. It is, in 2026, the largest bronze statue of any kind in the United States. On its bronze base, in raised letters 30 centimeters tall, is inscribed the sentence Lieutenant General Holland Smith spoke about Iwo Jima Marines 2 days after the battle's end. The sentence reads, "Uncommon valor was a common virtue." Joe Rosenthal, the Associated Press photographer who had taken the photograph, lived for 61 years after the moment of the second flag raising. He worked as a senior photographer for the San Francisco Chronicle from 1946 to 1981. He died of natural causes at his home in Novato, California, on August 20, 2006, at the age of 94. His obituary in the San Francisco Chronicle was 19 paragraphs long. The first 16 paragraphs were about the photograph he had taken on February 23, 1945. Rosenthal had given approximately 3,000 interviews about the photograph over his lifetime. His standard answer, when asked whether he had posed the flag raising for the camera, was the same answer he gave in his first 1945 interview to Time magazine. He said, "I just took the picture. The flag was going up. The men were raising it. The wind caught the cloth. I clicked the shutter. The Marines won the battle. I happened to be there." The original speed graphic camera that Joe Rosenthal had used at 1200 hours and 14 minutes of February 23, 1945, is, in 2026, on permanent display at the Museum in Washington, D.C. It is exhibited beside an original print of the photograph. Charles "Chuck" Lindbergh, the Marine of First Lieutenant Schreier's earlier patrol who had raised the small first flag at 10:30 hours of February 23, was the last surviving Marine of either Iwo Jima flag raising. He died at the age of 86 on June 24, 2007. Lindbergh, throughout his post-war life, had spoken publicly only of the first flag raising. He had said, in approximately 20 interviews between 1965 and 2007, the same sentence about the difference between the two flag raisings. He had said, "There were two flag raisings. There is one famous photograph. They are not the same thing. The first flag was the one that was won. The second flag was the one that was photographed. The men who deserve the credit are mostly buried." Iwo Jima itself, after the formal end of U.S. military administration in 1968, returned to the sovereignty of Japan. It is, in 2026, an active Japanese self-defense force station. It is normally closed to visitors. Annual joint U.S.-Japanese commemoration ceremonies have been conducted on the island since 1985. The 80th anniversary ceremony, conducted on March 26, 2025, was attended by approximately 200 persons including 6 surviving Iwo Jima Marines and 112 descendants of Japanese defenders. Of the original 70,000 Marines who had landed on Iwo Jima between February 19 and February 22 of 1945, the most senior surviving combat veteran in 2025 was Master Gunnery Sergeant Charles "Chuck" Tatum, age 98, of Stockton, California. Tatum had served as a Browning automatic rifleman with Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 27th Marines. He had landed on the southeastern beach at 09:45 hours of February 19, 1945. He had been wounded in his right arm on February 28. Tatum died of natural causes at his Stockton home on March 17, 2025, 9 days before the joint commemoration ceremony at which he had been scheduled to deliver the senior remarks. His remarks were delivered, in his absence, by his daughter Mary Tatum Connors. Mary Tatum Connors had brought, to the ceremony, a small framed black and white print of Joe Rosenthal's photograph that had been on her father's bedside table for the previous 63 years. Her father had purchased the print at a 1962 Stockton stationery store for $1.75. What the battle for Iwo Jima asks us, 81 years after Sergeant Michael Strank, Corporal Harlan Block, Privates First Class Franklin Sousley, Renee Gagnon, Ira Hayes, and Harold Schultz raised a 96 by 56-inch American flag at 1200 hours and 14 minutes of February 23, 1945, is the same question Holland Smith answered 2 days later. The question was, when 6,821 Americans die for an island 8 square miles in area, in 36 days, what does the country owe to the symbol the survivors raised at 1200 hours of the 5th day? Smith's answer was, a Marine Corps for the next 500 years. 3 of the 6 were dead within 30 days. A 4th was dead within 10 years, in a cotton field, of cold and alcohol. A 5th was misidentified for 71 years. A 6th told his stepdaughter the truth in a kitchen and was not believed. The bronze statue at Arlington stands. The photograph remains. The song that an Arkansas singer-songwriter wrote in 1962 and that Johnny Cash recorded in 1964 still plays, in 2026, on country radio approximately 4 times per day across the United States. Ira Hayes is buried at Arlington in Section 34, Plot 479. His headstone is unchanged from the day of his interment in 1955. The lyrics of Peter Lafarge's song are not inscribed on the stone. They are, however, sometimes left at the base of it on the anniversary of his death. So this is the question Iwo Jima leaves us with, 81 years after 1200 hours and 14 minutes of February 23, 1945. When a country builds an icon out of the moment its survivors raised a flag, and 3 of the survivors die within 30 days and 1 dies a frozen alcoholic in a cotton field, what does the icon stand for? Joe Rosenthal answered the question every day until 2006, I just took the picture. Holland Smith answered it for 500 years. Ira Hayes answered it on the morning of January 24, 1955, with his last bottle, on a cotton field in Arizona. Harold Schultz answered it in his Detroit kitchen in 1995 with 1 sentence. The country, in 2026, is still figuring out how to answer it. The flag still flies.